At some point, many homeowners begin to notice something subtle. Life has changed, but the home hasn't. The routines are different. The pace is different, and the house that once felt exactly right starts to feel just a little out of sync. Hello, and welcome to Life After the Family Home, smart conversations about downsizing and planning the next chapter. Today's conversation is about something that doesn't get talked about enough: what downsizing really looks like later in life. Not the checklist, not the logistics, but the experience. Because for many homeowners, downsizing isn't just a move, it's a transition from one stage of life into another. And that transition often comes with questions, uncertainty, and sometimes hesitation. This is something that Skip Benton with Coldwell Banker Selected Real Estate in Northern Nevada has seen many times over the years. Homeowners who understand the idea of downsizing, but aren't always sure what the experience will actually feel like. Let's start with something simple. Downsizing later in life is different than moving earlier in life. When you move earlier, it's often about growth, more space, more rooms, more capacity. But later in life, the goal begins to shift. It becomes less about expansion and more about alignment. Finding a home that fits how you live today, not how you lived 10, 20, or 30 years ago. And that shift can feel unfamiliar at first, because for many years, more space was the goal. Now, less space may actually make more sense, and that can take time to process. Another thing that often surprises homeowners is how much of the process is mental, not physical. Yes, there are logistics, there are decisions, there are things to organize, but the bigger part is adjusting how you think about your home. Because the home has likely been a constant, a place that didn't change, even as life did. And now, you're considering changing that constant. That's why many homeowners don't rush this decision, and they shouldn't, because this is not just about moving, it's about choosing how you want to live. One of the first realizations that often comes up is how much of the home is no longer used. Rooms that once had a purpose, but now sit quiet. Spaces that were important at one time, but are no longer part of daily life. And noticing that is often the beginning of the conversation. But noticing it doesn't mean acting on it right away. For many homeowners, this stage can last for years. And that's completely normal. Because awareness comes first. Action comes later. Another part of downsizing later in life is the emotional connection to the home. And this is where the process becomes very personal. Because the home represents more than space. It represents time, memories, experiences. And letting go of that space can feel like letting go of part of that history, even though it's not. That's why it's important to understand that downsizing does not erase the past. It simply creates space for the future, and for many homeowners, that shift in perspective takes time. There's also something else that often comes up: control. When homeowners downsize on their own timeline, they stay in control. They make the decisions. They choose the timing. They explore the options. But when downsizing is delayed too long, sometimes that control begins to shift. Decisions may need to be made more quickly. Options may become more limited. And the process can feel more reactive. That's something Skip has seen happen. Not because homeowners made a mistake, but because life introduced a change that required a decision. And when that happens, the experience can feel very different. That's why one of the most valuable things a homeowner can do is simply begin thinking about the process early. Not to act immediately, but to understand it. To become familiar with the options. To consider what might make life easier. And to approach the decision with clarity. Another important part of downsizing later in life is the idea of lifestyle. Because the home you choose next is not just about size, it's about how it supports your day-to-day life. Is it easier to maintain? Is it easier to navigate? Is it located where you want to be? Does it support how you want to spend your time? These questions matter more than square footage. And for many homeowners, this is where the process becomes more positive, because instead of focusing on what is being left behind, the focus begins to shift toward what is being created. A simpler routine, a more manageable home, a lifestyle that feels more aligned. That doesn't mean the process is always easy. There will still be decisions, there will still be moments of hesitation, but those moments are part of the transition, not something to avoid. And, over time, many homeowners begin to feel something unexpected. Relief. Because the home becomes easier to manage, the responsibilities become lighter, and daily life becomes a little more flexible. That's really what downsizing later in life is about. Not giving something up, but adjusting to what life looks like now, and creating a living environment that supports that. So if you found yourself noticing changes in how you use your home, in how you spend your time, or in what feels important, you're not alone. These are the same conversations many homeowners begin to have, and the goal is not to rush those conversations, but to have them, to think about them, and to approach the next step with intention. Thank you for joining this conversation about life after the family home, smart conversations about downsizing, and planning the next chapter.